Hi, I am Malaysia's. Today, I want to take you to a place where the land ends and the sea begins. A place of granite cliffs, furious storms, and a solitude so vast that it can swallow a human soul whole. We are going to explore a novel that Victor Hugo himself considered one of his most important works, and yet, it remains far less known than Les Miserables or Notre Dame de Paris. It is called The Toilers of the Sea. This book was born from exile. In 1851, Victor Hugo, the most famous writer in France, spoke out against tyranny and was forced to flee his homeland. He found refuge on a small, windswept island in the English Channel called Guernsey. He dedicated this novel to that island, calling it the Rock of Hospitality and Liberty. And from that rock, he wove a story where the sea is not just a setting, but a living, breathing character. A force of chaos that tests the limits of human courage. At the heart of this story is a man named Gilliatt. He is an outcast, a solitary fisherman who lives in a haunted house by the sea. The community shuns him. They whisper that he is a sorcerer, a man who made a pact with dark forces. But in truth, Gilliatt is simply a man who lives alone, asking for nothing, and receiving even less. He loves, from a distance and without any hope, a beautiful young girl named Gilliatt. He has never spoken to her. He simply watches her, his heart full of a silent, invisible devotion. A crisis throws their fates together. Gilliatt's uncle, a proud shipowner named Mess Lethierry, loses his most precious possession, the first steamship ever built, which is deliberately wrecked upon a deadly reef. In his despair, Lethierry makes a public vow. He will give his niece's hand in marriage to the man who can salvage the heart of his ruined ship. And Gilliatt, the outcast, the silent observer, hears this promise. And he decides to go. What follows is not just an adventure. It is a maritime book of Job. Alone on the open sea, Gilliatt will face storms that tear the sky apart, hunger, thirst, and horrors that lurk in the deep. Victor Hugo, with a poet's eye and a philosopher's mind, will force us to ask, what is the true price of love? And what happens when a man gives everything, only to find that his reward is something he could never have foreseen? In this series, I will walk you through every step of this epic journey. We will explore the characters, the society of Guernsey, the terrifying battle with the elements, and the final, devastating choice that has haunted readers for over a century. So find a quiet place. Let the sound of the sea wash over you. We are about to set sail for the Douvres reef. This is The Toilers of the Sea by Victor Hugo. Part 1, The Outcast and the Promise. Imagine a small island, battered by the wind and surrounded by a sea that never rests. This is Guernsey, in the English Channel, in the 1820s. The people here are fishermen, sailors, and smugglers. They are tough, superstitious, and deeply suspicious of anything that does not fit neatly into their understanding of the world. And there is one man on this island who does not fit at all. His name is Gilliatt. Gilliatt lives in a house that everyone believes is haunted. It is a low, dark building on the edge of the coast, lashed by the waves and the wind. The locals call it Les Bouts de la Rue, a place of ill omen. They avoid it. And they avoid him. Why? Because Gilliatt is different. He is a fisherman, yes, but he is also something else. He knows the sea in a way that seems almost supernatural. He can read the currents, predict the storms, and find fish where no one else can. He is strong, silent, and utterly alone. The children of the island mock him. The men distrust him. The women whisper that he has made a pact with the devil. No one knows his heart. And here, let me pause for a moment. Because I think Hugo is doing something very deliberate with this character. Gilliatt is not just an outcast. He is a mirror. He reflects back to the community their own fears and their own narrowness. They do not hate him for what he has done. They hate him for what he represents. The unknown. The different. The solitary soul who refuses to conform. How many times, I wonder, have we ourselves judged someone simply because we did not understand them? How many Gilliatts have we passed on the street without a second glance? But Gilliatt, despite his isolation, is not empty. His heart is full. He loves. And the woman he loves is the most beautiful girl on the island. Her name is Déruchette. She is the niece of a wealthy shipowner named Mess Lethierry. She is young, innocent, and radiant, with a laugh that sounds like a bell. Gilliatt has never spoken to her. He has never touched her hand. He simply watches her from a distance, his love a silent, invisible flame that burns only for him. Now, let me introduce you to Mess Lethierry. He is one of the most important men on Guernsey, a former sailor who has retired from the sea and invested his entire fortune in a single, magnificent project. He has built a steamship. The first of its kind in these waters. He calls it the Durand. And it is his pride, his joy, his proof that human ingenuity can conquer the elements. With its powerful engine and its paddle wheels, the Durand is a symbol of the future, a declaration that man is no longer at the mercy of the wind and the waves. Lethierry loves this ship as if it were his own child. But there is a man who works for Lethierry, a man everyone trusts. His name is Clubin. He is respected. He is admired. He has a reputation for absolute honesty. When he speaks, people listen. When he acts, people approve. And Clubin has a secret. Beneath that mask of integrity, he is planning a crime. He has been watching the Durand, studying its routes, calculating the tides. And one foggy morning, he makes his move. Clubin takes the helm of the Durand. He steers it deliberately, with cold precision, straight onto the Hanways, a jagged, treacherous reef off the coast of Guernsey. The ship screams as its hull is torn open. The passengers panic. But Clubin, ever the hero, calms them down and organizes their rescue. He is the last to leave the ship. Everyone praises his bravery. No one suspects that he is the cause of the disaster. And then, Clubin disappears. He tries to escape with a fortune he has stolen, but fate catches him in a way that only Victor Hugo could imagine. He is dragged down into the depths by the very sea he sought to exploit, a victim of his own greed. And the Durand, the pride of Mess Lethierry, is left impaled on the reef, its precious engine trapped between the rocks. When the news reaches Lethierry, he is destroyed. The ship was his life. Without it, he is ruined. He falls into a deep despair, unable to eat, unable to sleep. And in his grief, he makes a declaration. A promise. A vow. He swears that he will give the hand of his niece, Déruchette, in marriage to the man who can salvage the engine of the Durand from that deadly reef. I want you to stop and think about this moment. Lethierry, in his pain, has just turned his niece into a prize. A reward. He does not mean to be cruel. He is simply a man of his time, a man who sees the world in terms of bargains and debts. But the consequences of his words will be immense. Because those words have been heard. And there is one man on the island who is ready to act on them. Gilliatt, the outcast, the silent watcher, has heard the promise. And he has made a decision. He will go to the Hanways reef. Alone. He will face the fury of the sea. He will do what no one else dares to do. And he will do it not for money, not for glory, but for love. In the next part, we will follow Gilliatt as he prepares his small boat, gathers his tools, and sets out toward the reef, a lone figure against the vast, indifferent ocean. The adventure is about to begin. Part 2, The Battle with the Abyss. When Gilliatt set sail for the Douvres reef, he carried almost nothing with him. A few tools. Some salted meat. A small bag of biscuit. He did not even take a proper sail. He knew, perhaps with a certainty that went beyond reason, that he would not be returning quickly. The sea was calm on the morning of his departure, but the sky had that pale, metallic look that old sailors recognize as the prelude to something terrible. He rowed his small boat through the narrow channels, past the familiar cliffs of Guernsey, until the island behind him became a grey smudge on the horizon. And then he was alone. The Douvres reef is not a single rock. It is a pair of massive granite formations, rising out of the open sea like the fists of a drowned giant. Hugo describes them with a kind of terrifying poetry. They are not just rocks. They are presences. Ancient, malevolent, indifferent. The sea has been gnawing at them for millennia, carving caves and tunnels and hidden passages that no living man has ever seen. And there, impaled between the two great rocks, is the wreck of the Durand. Its hull is shattered. Its paddle wheel is frozen in mid-air, like the wing of a dead bird. And its engine, the precious heart of the ship, is trapped in a cage of twisted iron. Now, let me pause here, because I want you to truly grasp what Gilliatt is facing. He is alone. He has no crane, no winch, no team of workers. He has only his hands, his tools, and his mind. The engine he must salvage weighs several tons. The rocks are slippery with seaweed and sharp as knives. The tide rises and falls twice a day, transforming the landscape in a matter of hours. And above all, the weather in the English Channel is unforgiving. A single storm could sweep him off the rocks and into the abyss. Any reasonable man would have looked at this scene and turned back. But Gilliatt was not a reasonable man. He was a man in love. He set to work with a methodical patience that is almost painful to read. Day after day, he chipped away at the wreckage. He built a forge on the rock itself, using the wreck's own iron to make new tools. He constructed a system of pulleys and levers, using the weight of the sea itself to help him lift what no man could lift alone. Hugo describes his labor in exhaustive detail, and I must confess, these passages have sometimes been criticized as too technical, too slow. But I think that is exactly the point. Hugo wants us to feel the weight of every hour. He wants us to experience the boredom, the exhaustion, the maddening repetition of Gilliatt's task. Because that is what real heroism looks like. It is not a single dramatic gesture. It is 1,000 small, invisible acts of stubbornness, performed in silence, with no one watching. And here, let me share something personal with you. When I read about Gilliatt on his rock, I think about what it means to work without an audience. We live in a world that is obsessed with visibility. We want our efforts to be seen, our achievements to be celebrated. But Gilliatt worked in total solitude. There was no one to praise him, no one to encourage him, no one to witness what he was doing. The only eyes that watched him were the eyes of the sea birds and the cold, unblinking stars. And yet, he kept working. Not because he hoped for recognition, but because he had made a promise to himself. And that, I believe, is one of the purest forms of love there is. As the weeks passed, his supplies dwindled. The salted meat ran out. The biscuit became moldy. He ate shellfish scraped from the rocks, raw and cold. He drank rainwater collected in hollows of granite. His body grew thin. His skin was burned by the sun and crusted with salt. His hands were a mass of cuts and calluses. He began to speak to himself, and then, when even his own voice became too heavy, he fell into a vast, oceanic silence. He was becoming something else. Something less than a man, and perhaps, something more. And then, one night, the storm came. Not an ordinary storm, but a tempest of the kind that only the English Channel can produce. Hugo describes it as a living creature, a beast of wind and water that seemed to have a personal vendetta against the solitary figure on the rock. The waves crashed over the reef with a force that shook the granite. The wind screamed through the narrow passages like a chorus of demons. And Gilliatt, alone in the darkness, clung to the wreckage and fought. He fought the waves that tried to sweep him away. He fought the wind that tried to tear him from his perch. He fought the despair that whispered, in his own voice, that he would never leave this rock alive. The storm lasted for hours, and when it finally passed, the dawn revealed a scene of absolute devastation. But Gilliatt was still there. Broken, exhausted, barely alive, but still there. And the engine, the precious engine that Mess Lethierry had promised his niece for, was safe. Gilliatt had saved it. Against all odds, against all reason, he had done what he set out to do. But the sea had one more challenge waiting for him. In one of the deep caves beneath the reef, something was watching. Something ancient, patient, and hungry. A creature that had never been seen by human eyes. And in the next part, Gilliatt will descend into that darkness and face the most terrifying battle of his life. A battle against a monster that Victor Hugo would make famous throughout the world. Part 3, The Devilfish. There is a moment in this novel that has echoed through literature for over a century and a half. A moment so vivid, so terrifying, and so strange that it single-handedly changed the way the Western world imagined a certain creature of the deep. Before Victor Hugo wrote this chapter, the octopus was a curiosity, a thing of sailors' yarns and half-believed legends. After he wrote it, the octopus became a monster. And the word he used to describe it, devilfish, entered the nightmares of generations. Let me set the scene. The storm has passed. The engine of the Durand is secure, lashed to the rock by a system of ropes and pulleys that only Gilliatt's desperate ingenuity could have devised. But his work is not yet finished. There is a cave, a deep fissure in the granite of the Douvres reef, accessible only at low tide. In that cave, Gilliatt knows, there are crabs and lobsters. Food. And he is starving. So he descends into the darkness, knife in hand, searching for something to eat. The cave is a cathedral of stone, carved by millennia of waves. The light filters down through the water, creating a green, otherworldly glow. The walls are slick with algae. The air is thick with the smell of salt and decay. And there, in the shadows, something is waiting. Hugo's description of the octopus is a masterpiece of horror, and I want to read you a part of it, because it deserves to be heard in his own words. He writes, "The spectre lies in wait, it is a hideous object, it is a trap. This is the creature for which sailors have invented the name devilfish. It has no blood, no bones, no flesh. It is soft and flabby. Its substance is a glutinous mass which cannot be held. Its color is the gray of the surrounding rocks, a gray which is at once dirty and transparent. When it moves, it seems to flow rather than to crawl. Its eyes are not eyes, but two pale, phosphorescent spots. Its mouth, a vast, shapeless opening, is filled with rows of teeth. Its arms, 8 in number, are long, flexible, and covered with suckers that can fasten onto anything they touch." And here, let me pause. Because what Hugo is doing is not just describing an animal. He is describing evil itself. The octopus, in his hands, becomes a symbol. A symbol of everything that is formless, predatory, and impossible to grasp. It is death, not as a skeleton with a scythe, but as a shapeless, suffocating darkness that envelopes you before you even know it is there. Gilliatt, the rational man, the patient worker, the solitary hero, is about to face something that cannot be reasoned with, cannot be bargained with, and cannot be escaped. The creature attacks. It wraps its arms around Gilliatt. The suckers, each one a tiny, living mouth, fasten onto his skin. He feels the cold, gelatinous flesh pressing against his face, his chest, his legs. He cannot move. He cannot breathe. The pressure is immense, crushing, nauseating. He is being absorbed by a living nightmare. But Gilliatt is not a man who surrenders. He has his knife. And in a passage that is almost unbearable to read, he begins to fight back. He stabs blindly into the mass of flesh. The octopus does not bleed. It does not flinch. It simply tightens its grip. He stabs again, and again, and again, each thrust met with the same horrible, silent resistance. He is drowning in the creature's embrace, his lungs burning, his vision fading. Now, I want to ask you something. Have you ever faced a problem that seemed to have no solution? A situation that wrapped itself around you so completely that you could not see a way out? Gilliatt's battle with the octopus is, in my view, the perfect metaphor for that kind of despair. The creature is not just a monster. It is everything in life that suffocates us. Our fears. Our regrets. Our loneliness. The weight of a world that does not care whether we live or die. And Gilliatt, with his small knife and his stubborn, unbreakable will, is every human being who has ever refused to give up. And then, he remembers something. The octopus has a weakness. A small, hidden spot behind its head, where the skin is thin and the bone is absent. It is the one place where a blade can penetrate to the brain. Gilliatt, with the last of his strength, twists his body, reaches around the creature's head, and drives his knife into that single, vulnerable point. The octopus shudders. Its arms loosen. Its grip weakens. And slowly, horribly, it begins to die. The battle is over. Gilliatt is alive. He drags himself out of the cave, covered in wounds, his body marked by the circular scars of the suckers. He has faced the abyss and has survived. But the cost, as we shall see, has been enormous. Not just to his body, but to his soul. In the next part, Gilliatt will complete his task. He will salvage the engine and return to Guernsey. But the hero's welcome he secretly dreams of, the reward he has sacrificed everything for, will not be what he expects. The sea is not the only thing that can break a man's heart. Part 4, The Return. There is a particular kind of silence that falls over a man who has survived something terrible. It is not the silence of peace. It is the silence of aftermath. The silence of a battlefield after the fighting is done, when the dead lie still and the living are too exhausted to speak. Gilliatt, standing on the deck of his small boat, watching the Douvres reef recede into the mist, was a man wrapped in that silence. He had done the impossible. The engine of the Durand was secured behind him, lashed to a makeshift raft that he had built with his own hands. He had fought the storm. He had killed the devilfish. He had spent weeks alone on a rock that was never meant to sustain human life. And now, he was going home. But what does it mean to go home, when you have been to the edge of the world and back? What does it mean to return to ordinary life, when you have looked into the abyss and seen it look back at you? Gilliatt, I think, did not ask himself these questions. He was not a philosopher. He was a man of action, a man of few words and even fewer introspections. But the questions were there, beneath the surface, waiting. The journey back to Guernsey was calm. The sea, which had tried so hard to kill him, now seemed almost indifferent to his presence. As if it had forgotten him. As if the struggle that had nearly cost him his life was, to the vast and ancient ocean, nothing more than a ripple on its surface. The sky was clear. The wind was gentle. And Gilliatt, steering his boat toward the familiar coastline, allowed himself, perhaps for the first time in his life, to hope. He imagined the scene. He would arrive at the harbor. The people would see the engine, the precious engine that everyone believed was lost forever. They would cheer. They would marvel. Mess Lethierry would embrace him. And Déruchette. Déruchette would look at him, not with the distant pity she had always shown the outcast, but with something else. Something warmer. Something that recognized what he had done, and why he had done it. He had not done it for money. He had not done it for glory. He had done it for her. And surely, she would understand that now. I want to pause here, because there is something unbearably tender about this moment. Gilliatt, the solitary, the silent, the man who had never spoken a word of love to anyone, was dreaming. He was dreaming the same dream that every human being has dreamed at some point in their life. The dream that if we just try hard enough, if we just sacrifice enough, if we just prove our worth beyond any shadow of a doubt, then we will be loved. Then we will be seen. Then we will finally belong. It is a beautiful dream. And it is a dangerous one. Because when Gilliatt's boat finally rounded the headland and entered the harbor of St. Sampson, something was wrong. He could see the Durand's engine, securely tied to his raft, gleaming in the afternoon sun. It was there. It was real. He had done it. But the people on the shore were not cheering. They were not running to the docks to greet him. They were standing in small groups, talking quietly among themselves, their faces a mixture of curiosity and something else. Something that looked almost like pity. Mess Lethierry was there. He saw the engine. He saw Gilliatt. And he wept. He wept with joy, with relief, with the overwhelming gratitude of a man who has been given back everything he thought he had lost. He embraced Gilliatt. He called him a hero. He promised him everything. But even as he spoke, Gilliatt's eyes were searching the crowd. He was looking for Déruchette. And then he saw her. She was there, on the edge of the crowd. But she was not looking at him. She was looking at someone else. A young man, a pastor, who had arrived on the island during Gilliatt's absence. His name was Ebenezer Caudray. He was gentle, educated, and kind. And Déruchette was looking at him the way Gilliatt had always dreamed she would one day look at him. Now, let me speak directly to you for a moment. Because this, right here, is the moment that breaks my heart. Gilliatt is standing in front of the entire town. He is covered in scars. He has faced the storm. He has killed the monster. He has salvaged the impossible. And he is watching the woman he loves fall in love with someone else. And he does nothing. He says nothing. He simply sees. And understands. What do you do, when the reward you fought for is given to someone else? What do you do, when you have climbed the highest mountain, only to find that the view is not for you? These are not easy questions. And Hugo does not offer easy answers. He simply shows us Gilliatt, standing on the shore, a hero and a stranger, holding a victory that has already turned to ashes in his hands. In the next part, we will witness the final, devastating choice that Gilliatt makes. A choice that will define him, not as a man who fought the sea, but as a man who understood the true meaning of love. And that choice, I warn you, will require a courage far greater than any battle with a monster. Part 5, The Sacrifice. There is a kind of love that most of us never learn. We are taught, from the time we are children, that love is about winning. About possessing. About being chosen. The stories we tell ourselves are stories of conquest. The hero defeats the villain. The lover wins the beloved. The struggle ends in a reward. But Victor Hugo, in the final pages of this novel, asks us to imagine something different. Something far more difficult, and far more beautiful. He asks us to imagine a love that does not seek to possess, but to release. A love that does not demand to be chosen, but chooses to step aside. A love that is willing to disappear, not because it is weak, but because it is strong beyond anything we can comprehend. Gilliatt had returned from the Douvres reef a hero. But he had returned to a world that had already moved on without him. Mess Lethierry, overjoyed at the recovery of his engine, was ready to fulfill his promise. He was ready to give Déruchette to the man who had saved his fortune. But Déruchette's heart belonged to someone else. And Gilliatt knew it. And here, let me pause for a moment. Because I think this is the most important moment in the entire novel, and I want us to sit with it. Gilliatt is standing at a crossroads. He could claim his reward. He could hold Lethierry to his word. The old man is an honorable man. He would consent. Déruchette, dutiful and kind, would obey. Gilliatt could have what he has fought for. He could have the woman he loves. And no one would blame him. But he does not. He does something that, to this day, takes my breath away. He goes to Déruchette. He tells her that he knows about Ebenezer, the young pastor she loves. And he tells her that he will help them. He will step aside. He will not stand in the way of her happiness. And more than that, he will give them the means to start their life together. He has a small inheritance, a modest sum of money that his mother left him. He gives it to Déruchette. Not as a loan. Not as a gesture. But as a gift. A gift to the woman he loves, to begin a life with another man. Think about that. Think about what it costs. Gilliatt is not a wealthy man. He has nothing except that small inheritance and the clothes on his back. And he gives it all away. He gives it to the woman who will never be his. He gives it to the man who will hold her hand, wake up beside her, grow old with her. And he does it without resentment. Without bitterness. Without hope of recognition or reward. And then, he does something even more extraordinary. He arranges for them to be married. Quickly. Secretly. He helps Déruchette and Ebenezer elope, knowing that Lethierry, who has already promised his niece to Gilliatt, would never consent to her marriage to another man. Gilliatt becomes the architect of his own heartbreak. He builds the bridge that carries the woman he loves away from him. On the night of their departure, Gilliatt goes to the harbor. He watches as Déruchette and Ebenezer board the ship that will take them away from Guernsey. They do not see him. He is hidden in the shadows, a solitary figure on the edge of the dock. He watches as the ship raises its sails. He watches as it glides out of the harbor and into the open sea. And he keeps watching, long after the ship has become a speck on the horizon. He is watching his love disappear. And he is letting her go. But Hugo, with his unerring instinct for tragedy, is not finished. Because there is a rock near the harbor. A rock called Guillemot, which is exposed only at low tide. A chair-shaped rock, where Gilliatt used to sit and watch the sea, and watch Déruchette in the distance. And after the ship is gone, Gilliatt walks out to that rock. The tide is rising. He knows it. He sits in the chair-shaped rock. The water begins to climb. Slowly. Inexorably. It covers his feet. It covers his knees. It covers his waist. He does not move. Why? Why does he stay there, letting the sea take him? Hugo does not give us an easy answer. Perhaps Gilliatt, having lost the only thing he ever truly wanted, simply had no reason to return to the shore. Perhaps he was so exhausted, so emptied by his sacrifice, that he could no longer imagine a life beyond it. Or perhaps, just perhaps, he understood that his story was already complete. He had loved, fully and unconditionally. He had given everything he had, asking nothing in return. And in that giving, he had become something more than a man. He had become a kind of saint. I think about this ending often. I think about Gilliatt sitting on that rock, the water rising around him, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the last trace of Déruchette's ship has already vanished. He is not angry. He is not afraid. He is simply still. The sea, which he has fought and conquered, now takes him into its embrace. Not as an enemy, but as a friend. Or perhaps as something even older than a friend. A mother. A grave. A home. The tide rises. The rock disappears beneath the waves. And Gilliatt, the twaller of the sea, the outcast, the hero, the lover who never spoke his love, is gone. Only the sea remains. And it tells no tales. I am Milesius. This was The Toilers of the Sea by Victor Hugo. Thank you for listening. If this story moved you, please subscribe and follow the playlist. And remember, the greatest love is not the one that takes. It is the one that gives, even when there is nothing left to give.